The following review contains significant plot spoilers. Please watch at your own risk.
Excuse me. Shut it down. Thank you.
Cheer up, Saunders. The operation's a success. And officially still yours.
I have no intention of leaving it at that, 007. I'm reporting to M that you deliberately missed. Your orders were to kill that sniper.
Stuff my orders. I only kill professionals. That girl didn't know one end of a rifle from the other. Go ahead, tell him what you want. If he fires me, I'll thank him for it. Whoever she was must have scared the living daylights out of her.
Shortly after the release of A View to a Kill, Roger Moore announced that he was done playing James Bond. The producers over at Eon figured that this time would come soon enough and were prepared to find a new James Bond. Sam Neill, Pierce Brosnan, and Timothy Dalton all screen tested for the role, and in the end the role was offered to Brosnan. There is one little problem with that, however. Brosnan was still contracted to the popular TV show Remington Steele, and therefore cannot be Bond. It was ultimately decided that Timothy Dalton would be the new Bond. The Living Daylights is the 15th official Bond film and was released in 1987, starring Timothy Dalton as James Bond 007. So the film starts off with a new gun barrel sequence featuring Timothy Dalton before heading into the pre-title sequence. This PTS is, in one word, incredible. We see 3 00 agents performing a training exercise on the Rock of Gibraltar, and one of them ends up getting killed by an unnamed assassin. As this agent is falling off a cliff to his death, we get our first glimpse of Dalton as he turns around and gives that chilling glance. A big action sequence then takes place of Bond running after the assassin and jumping onto the top of his truck as they are speeding down Gibraltar. Dalton did most of his own stunts in this sequence, which is pretty damn awesome and shows his dedication. In the end, Bond kills the assassin, and we get a nice Bond, James Bond, line from Dalton, which brings us to the title song of the film, done by Aha. The song is actually one of my favorites in the whole series, and it boggles my mind that so many people hate it. After the song, we see Bond on an assignment to aid the defection of a KGB officer named Georgy Koskov, played by Jerome Krabbe. During the mission, Bond notices that the KGB sniper sent to kill Koskov is a female cellist that he saw earlier from an orchestra. Bond shoots the rifle out of her hands, scaring the living daylights out of her, and uses a pipeline to smuggle Koskov into Austria and then Britain. Later, Koskov informs MI6 that the KGB's old policy, Smrt Spionem, meaning death to spies, has been revived by General Pushkin, the new head of the KGB. Koskov is abducted from the MI6 safe house by a mysterious man named Nekros, played by Andreas Wisniewski, and is assumed to be taken back to Moscow. Bond is ordered to go to Tangier, where Pushkin is, and kill him to prevent any more tensions between the Soviet Union and the West. Before heading there, Bond tracks down the cellist sniper, who he identifies as Kara Milovi, played by Mariam Dabo. When Bond learns that Koskov's defection was staged and that Kara is actually Koskov's girlfriend, he begins to suspect something fishy. Bond convinces Kara that he is a friend of Koskov's and persuades her to accompany him to Vienna, where Koskov supposedly is. Meanwhile, Pushkin meets with arms dealer Brad Whitaker, played by Joe Don Baker, informing him that the KGB is canceling an arms deal between him and Koskov. When Bond and Kara get to Vienna, Bond meets with his MI6 ally Saunders, who tells him of dealings between Koskov and Whitaker. Saunders is killed by Necros, revealed to be a henchman to Koskov and Whitaker, which enrages Bond. Bond and Kara then go to Tangier, where Bond confronts Pushkin. Bond learns from Pushkin that Koskov has set him up, and ends up staging Pushkin's assassination in order to make Koskov and Whitaker progress with their scheme. Meanwhile, Kara contacts Koskov, who tells her that Bond is a KGB agent, and convinces her to drug him so that he can be captured. Koskov, Necros, Kara, and a captured Bond fly to a Soviet airbase in Afghanistan, where Koskov betrays Kara and imprisons her along with Bond. They manage to escape from the airbase, and in the process free a condemned prisoner, Kamran Shah, played by Art Malik, who is the leader of the local Mujahideen, which is basically the Afghan resistance. Bond and Kara discover that Koskov is using Soviet funds to buy a massive shipment of opium from the Mujahideen, intending to keep the profits with enough left over to supply the Soviets with their arms. With help from the Mujahideen, Bond plants a bomb aboard the cargo plane carrying the opium, but is spotted by Koskov. Bond has no choice but to stay in the plane, and Kara manages to drive a jeep into the back of the plane as they take off. Unknowns to Bond, Necros happens to make his way into the plane, and the two have a grand fight, hanging off the back of a cargo net in the sky. Bond eventually drops Necros out of the plane and quickly deactivates the bomb. He later reactivates it and drops it onto a bridge, blowing it up and helping Kamran and his men gain an important victory over advancing Soviet troops. Bond later returns to Tangier and kills Whitaker after a brief confrontation. Pushkin then arrives and has Koskov arrested. The film concludes at Kara's concert in Vienna, where Bond waits for her in their dressing room and the two make love. Okay, so first let's talk about Timothy Dalton. Dalton is a very polarizing Bond, with fans either loving him or hating him. So what's my opinion, you ask? Well, I have to say that Dalton is my second favorite Bond in the entire series so far, just behind Sean Connery. After all those years with the funny and comedic Roger Moore, it is most certainly a breath of fresh air to see a new serious reinvention of the character. In many interviews, Dalton has said that he constantly went back to the books of Ian Fleming to play the character as closely as possible. Well, after watching this film, you could definitely agree. Dalton is by far the most serious and accurate Bond. That doesn't mean that there aren't any one-liners, though, because there are. The only bad thing about Dalton is how he handles the humor, but to be honest, that isn't really a big factor to me. I also actually see that many people call Dalton the worst and most boring Bond, which I find laughable to say the least. He is so badass in some scenes, like the one where he doesn't care if M fires him for not killing the sniper. Dalton was definitely the right choice for Bond, and possibly ended up saving the franchise. In this film, we kinda get two main villains, similar to Octopussy. Koskov is set up to be the main villain, but Whitaker is also shown to be just as important, despite having way less screen time. To be honest, neither of these two characters are all that amazing, but Koskov is actually pretty memorable and decent. This is also the first time in the series that a villain gets arrested instead of getting killed. M and Q return, being played by the same actors, while Caroline Bliss takes over as Moneypenny. I'll be honest, Bliss is a very unmemorable Moneypenny, and is definitely my least favorite in the series. It also doesn't help that she doesn't get many good scenes. We get quite a few allies in this film. Saunders starts off as a slightly annoying and irritating guy, but in the scene right before he dies, he shows a different side. I found that Saunders was a very good character despite having very few scenes. Kamran Shah is also a pretty good ally, but not as good as Saunders. Lastly, we have the return of Felix Leiter, this time played by John Terry, who provides nothing at all to the character. He gets at least 3 minutes of screen time, no joke, and could have easily been excluded. I should also mention that General Gogol makes one last appearance in the series at the end of the film. The focus is all on one henchman this time around, and that man is Necros. I'll just say it, Necros is my favorite henchman in the entire series. He is a Red Grant clone, but is much more badass. He strangles people with headphones and is always listening to the same song when he does it. His best scene is when he disguises himself as a milkman and throws explosive milk bottles at people. You have to see the film to see what I mean. It's pretty crazy. Our main Bond girl this time around is Cara Malavi, played brilliantly by Mariam Dabo. Cara is definitely on my top 10 Bond girls list because she is an innocent and sweet character who doesn't know what she's gotten herself into. Her relationship with Bond in the film is also pretty deep, and probably the deepest since way back in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. John Glenn returns yet again to direct and does a great job with nearly every single scene. John Barry also returns for the very last time and delivers an incredible score which is easily one of his best. I want to keep these reviews a little shorter so I won't preview any tracks, but just look up Ice Chaser or In-Flight Fight on YouTube and you'll be able to listen to some of the epicness. The grand scheme of this film is nothing special and is quite realistic, which is something we haven't seen for a while. The whole plot with Koskov is fantastic though. What's also fantastic is the action sequences, which easily rank as some of the best in the series. The PTS is my third favorite in the series, and the two fight scenes with Necros are extremely well choreographed and exciting. There's also a rooftop chase in Tangier and a car chase near the border of Austria, where Bond and Kara slide down a hill on a cello case while being shot at by soldiers. It's kind of silly, but it works. The only disappointing action scene was the finale with Whitaker, but honestly, the big fight scene with Necros beforehand made up for it. The locations are pretty good, with places like Austria, Tangier, and of course Afghanistan, which serves as the finale of the film. The only glaring problem I have with this film is when Bond gets to Afghanistan. The film seems to slow down and doesn't pick back up again until the airbase fight. The Living Daylights is not just a good debut for a new Bond, it's an extraordinary debut. It's also an extraordinary film with not many negatives to point out, besides the character of Whitaker, the new Moneypenny, and most of the scenes in Afghanistan. This is definitely the best Bond film since For Your Eyes Only, and one of the best in the entire series, period. I give The Living Daylights a 9 out of 10. Now let's go over the top 5 things I liked about the film. Timothy Dalton makes a fantastic Bond and easily the best since Connery. We get an exceptional Bond girl for once and easily one of the best in the franchise. The action sequences are very exciting. Necros plays one of the most memorable henchmen in quite a while. And finally, John Barry delivers one of his best Bond scores in quite a while. And now for my 5 dislikes, which were kind of hard to find. Caroline Bliss as Moneypenny isn't really all that great or memorable. Joe Don Baker as Brad Whitaker doesn't really do too much and doesn't get a satisfactory fight with Bond. John Terry as Felix Leiter is probably the worst Felix Leiter in the series. Dalton's delivery with some of the one-liners are kind of bland but not too significant. And lastly, most of the scenes in Afghanistan are slow and not all that interesting. Another week gone so fast. Next week we will look at what is unfortunately the second and last Bond film to star Dalton. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.